There's a scene that no one who was at Lambeau Field that January night in 2011 can describe without pausing mid-sentence. The air was freezing. The temperature had dropped below -12 degrees Celsius. The stands were filled with that sea of green and yellow that makes the Green Bay Packers Stadium one of the most intimidating places in professional American football. And in the center of it all, on a field that looked more like an extension of a Wisconsin winter than a playing field, Aaron Charles Rodgers was preparing to lead his team to the Super Bowl. There was no fabricated drama in that scene. He was just a man, his team, and the weight of an entire history about to change direction. To understand what happened that night and what happened every night before and after it, we need to go much further back, far beyond the cameras, the spotlights, and the national broadcasts. We need to go back to Chico, a city in Northern California where life didn't move at the frenetic pace of any metropolis, where American football was a neighborhood religion, and where a fair-haired boy spent hours in the garage practicing passes against the wall, inventing routes, imagining defenses, living inside a game he didn't yet know would define his existence. Aaron Rodgers was born on December 2, 1983 in Chico, California. His father, Ed Rodgers, had played college football and maintained a deep connection to the sport, which he passed on to his son almost as a genetic inheritance. The family was religious and structured, and Aaron grew up in an environment where values such as discipline and commitment were not philosophical abstractions, but daily practices. He was the middle child among 3 siblings, and this position in the family dynamic may have shaped something that would become one of the most striking characteristics of his personality: the ability to observe, to process, to wait for the right moment without disintegrating under pressure. In high school, Rodgers played for Pleasant Valley High School. He was good, but he wasn't the phenomenon that elite university scouts chase for years. His body hadn't fully developed yet, and the American college recruitment system, which often confuses size with talent, simply didn't see what was in front of him. No top-tier university recruited him. No prestigious national program knocked on his door. That teenager who saw the game with an almost frightening clarity for his age was ignored in a way that would, years later, be the most powerful symbol of everything he would prove to the world. Rodgers began his college career at Butte Community College in Oroville, California, a junior college, the kind of place that rarely appears in the glory stories of American football. But it was there, in an environment far from the spotlight, that Rodgers began to build something that no elite school could have offered in the same way: hunger. He spent only 1 season at Butte, but it was enough for Jeff Tedford, coach at the University of California, Berkeley, to notice him. Tedford had a keen eye for quarterbacks, having developed players like Trent Dilfer and Kyle Baller, and recognized in the young man from Chico a rare combination of tactical intelligence and throwing mechanics. At UC Berkeley, Rodgers played for the California Golden Bears and in 2 seasons put up numbers that drew national attention. He completed 61.6% of his passes, threw for 5,469 yards and 43 touchdowns throughout his college career, with an extraordinarily low interception rate for a quarterback his age. But what the numbers didn't capture was the way he moved the pocket, how he read the defense before the snap, how his eyes scanned the field with a processing speed that seemed to belong to someone who had already played 10 years in the professional league. The 2005 NFL Draft is one of the most told and least fully told stories in league history. Aaron Rodgers was projected as the first overall pick. Analysts, former players, heavyweight commentators all pointed to him as the most ready, most complete, and most reliable quarterback in that draft class. And then the broadcast began, and Commissioner Paul Tagliabue went to the microphone, and the name called was Alex Smith. The San Francisco 49ers selected Alex Smith with the first overall pick. What followed was one of the longest and most quietly devastating scenes that NFL draft theater has ever produced. Rodgers sat there. His family was beside him. The cameras found him and pulled away and came back, and he remained there with that expression that tried not to reveal what was happening inside. 1 pick went by, 2, 5, 10, 22 picks went by before the Green Bay Packers, with the 24th pick in the 2005 draft, pronounced his name. 24. The number became a tattoo in Rodgers' memory. Not in the literal sense, but in the sense that he carried that number like fuel for years to come. Every team he passed through, every analyst who doubted him, Every moment in that room where the phone didn't ring, all of that was stored somewhere inside him that wasn't bitterness, but something more dangerous to his adversaries. Determination with a long memory. Green Bay wasn't just a team. It was an institution. When Rodgers arrived in 2005, Brett Favre was still the starting quarterback, and the context that created was unlike any other in the league. Favre was a demigod in Green Bay. He had led the Packers to Super Bowl XXX, won the title after the 1996 season, and built a relationship with the Wisconsin city that transcended sports. Entering that locker room as Brett Favre's designated successor wasn't just a technical matter. It was a cultural, emotional, and almost theological one for Packers fans. Rodgers spent 3 seasons as a backup observing Favre. 3 years. In other quarters, 3 years on the bench would have been enough to destroy confidence or create resentment that would eventually leak to the press. For Rodgers, those 3 years functioned as a private graduate program. He dissected every Favre game, understood the decisions, processed the mistakes, absorbed the rhythm of the professional league from a place that gave him time and space to grow without the immediate pressure of being a starter. It wasn't a comfortable process, but it was a process that worked. In 2008, Favre announced his retirement, then reversed his decision, and the ensuing saga ended with his trade to the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers became the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. The weight of that moment is difficult to quantify. The entire city watched. The national media watched. Every game Rodgers played would be measured against the ghost of Favre, and any stumble would be interpreted as confirmation that the transition had been a mistake. His first season as a starter, in 2008, was promising but inconsistent. Rodgers threw for 4,038 yards and 28 touchdowns, with only 13 interceptions. These were good numbers, the numbers of a quarterback with a future. But Green Bay finished with 6 wins and 10 losses, a season of building that didn't satisfy the thirst of a fan base accustomed to Favre. The criticism came, as it always does. Rodgers was good, they said, but he wasn't Favre. Rodgers was technically skilled, they said, but something was missing. That kind of analysis that can't name what's missing but feels the need to say that something is lacking. The 2009 season was better. Green Bay finished 11th and 5th, and Rodgers completed 64.7% of his passes for 4,434 yards and 30 touchdowns. The team reached the playoffs, but was eliminated by the Arizona Cardinals in a painful game. The process was accelerating, but the definitive moment had not yet arrived. And then came 2010, the season that changed everything. The Green Bay Packers entered that season with moderate expectations. They had talent, they had a developing quarterback, but the road to the Super Bowl seemed long. What happened throughout that year was one of the most fascinating stories in a sport full of them. The team suffered from injuries with brutal frequency. The list of players in the medical department at different points in the season included key players, and the collective identity of the group was tested week after week. Rodgers responded in a way that made even the most skeptical observers stop talking about what was missing. He finished the regular season with 3,922 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and just 11 interceptions, with a passer rating of 101.2. The Packers finished with a 10-6 record, enough to enter the playoffs as the 6th seed in the NFC, which meant they would need to win on the road throughout the postseason to reach the Super Bowl. What happened next was sports poetry. In the wild card round, the Packers went to Philadelphia and defeated the Eagles. Then they went to Atlanta, the Falcons, who had finished with the best record in the NFC, and won again. And then came the Chicago Bears in the NFC Championship game at Soldier Field, the home field of the Packers' historic rivals in Chicago. The 2010 NFC Championship game, played on January 23, 2011, is one of those games that doesn't need narrative exaggeration because the reality is already cinematic enough. Rodgers completed 16 of 27 passes for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. His passer rating was 55.4, a number that doesn't capture what happened on the field because the context was one of difficult playing conditions, playoff pressure, and the weight of winning on the rival's territory. The Packers won 21-14 and secured their spot in Super Bowl XLV in Dallas. Super Bowl XLV, played on February 6, 2011 at Cowboys Stadium, pitted the Packers against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was the kind of matchup the NFL dreams of staging. 2 historic teams, 2 organizations with multiple titles, 2 winning cultures, and at the center of it all was Aaron Rodgers, just 27 years old, playing the most important game of his life. He was perfect. Not in the strict statistical sense, but in the sense that at every crucial moment he made the right decision. He completed 24 of 39 passes for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns. His favorite receiver that night was Jordy Nelson, who caught 9 passes for 140 yards. Rodgers was unanimously named MVP of Super Bowl XLV, leaving no room for argument. The Packers won 31-25, and Aaron Rodgers lifted the Vince Lombardi Trophy in the same state where the trophy was named after its creator. At that moment, the narrative changed definitively. No longer the young man who had been chosen in the 24th position, no longer Favre's replacement, no longer the quarterback who needed to prove something. Aaron Rodgers was a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, and had gotten there by winning every game in the postseason. The journey had been from the outside in, from the bottom up, and the final destination had been exactly the one he always knew he would find. What followed the Super Bowl was one of the most dominant seasons by a quarterback in modern NFL history. In 2011, Rodgers had a season that analysts simply didn't know how to categorize without resorting to superlatives that would seem exaggerated if not backed up by the numbers. He threw for 4,643 yards and 45 touchdowns with only 6 interceptions. His regular season passer rating was 122.5, the second highest in NFL history at the time. His interception rate that year was 1.2%, a number that defined not only accuracy, but absolute situational control. To understand technically why Aaron Rodgers was different from other quarterbacks of his generation, it's necessary to break down what he did before the snap.